Hey everyone, Percy Jules here. Today we're gonna talk about a British male artist who's just released his second studio album. Now, back in 2015, his amazing debut album called Chaos and the Calm was released. We had to wait 3 years, but it's finally here. We've got a follow-up. The title is Electric Lights, and the artist, of course, is James Bay. Now, what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna put on my headphones, I'm gonna listen to this album, and I'm gonna give you my honest opinion about it. I promise. Okay, well that was a pretty interesting experience. The first thing you'll notice when you listen to this album is that if you know the first album, this is a bit different. Let's first talk about the style of music, so the genre. The first album was clearly a rock album, so rock, indie rock you might have called it. So that was very clear from the beginning what it was all about. Very straightforward in that regard. On this album you can still hear that rock flavor, so you hear rock and roll, blues, it's jazzy here and there, gospel and soul are also represented on this album, but it is all much more pop music oriented. You know, it's much more commercially produced, if you will. And also, this album can very easily be classified as an R&B album, so very much R&B influenced. So all in all, it's actually a mixture of many different styles and genres all combined into this one album. Okay, now let's talk about the production. Well, the first album was very flat, and I don't at all mean that in a negative way. I mean it was much more subtly done. The production on this album has a lot more twists and bells and whistles, you know, and you can hear a lot more synthesizer sounds, so it's a lot more electronic oriented music that you hear. You can still hear some of the rawness of the first album, but it's much more processed and much more electronically enhanced than the first one. So for instance, you can hear a lot of distortion on many of the instruments. The vocals, you can hear some auto-tuning going on, some extreme auto-tuning here and there, a lot of reverb, a lot of filtering, you know, so a lot of sound designing, sound shaping has been going on, and as a result this album just sounds a lot more polished than the first one. Okay, now let me say this. For some reason, first impressions seem to stick with us, and we seem to want to hold on to them and use them as a frame of reference for anything and everything that follows. So I'm absolutely sure that many people will listen to this album and say, well, this is not the James Bay I know, and I don't really like it. I've actually already read some reviews that were pretty negative about this album and were mainly focusing on the style of music, the genre, and the change in direction of that, and also the production. Many people will say that this is overproduced. Now, whenever people talk about these kind of things in a negative way, in my opinion, it is usually because people tend to very radically hold on to certain ideas they have about music. Very often based on some first impressions they have about something. And anything that deviates from that is almost automatically classified as strange, as odd, as negative. But again, in my opinion, it seems more like an unwillingness to open up to new ways of looking and new ways of listening to music. So for instance, if I listen to the production of this music, the production of this album, you know, it sounds very deliberate. It doesn't at all sound like some guy just randomly added some effects to this music. So there definitely was some idea, there was some vision behind it. So if you manage to tune in to the mindset in which this album was created, in which it was written, in which it was composed and produced, you might get to experience this album in a totally different way. You know, and instead of saying that it is overproduced, you might come to the conclusion that from a particular musical point of view, it is actually very well crafted. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about the songs, the way they are constructed. What struck me was that these songs, or at least The hooks of some of these songs, in comparison to the first album, seem a little bit more sophisticated and a little bit stronger. And they do exactly that. They hook you into enjoying these songs. And you might describe that as being a little bit more commercial or whatever, but anyway, in my opinion, that is what is going on. And in addition, some of these songs seem to be constructed with the production in mind. They go hand in hand, so it's sometimes impossible to see the production as separate from the songs themselves. And that also takes another way of approaching these songs to get a good idea of the initial idea behind them. Okay, so in conclusion, I think the songs on this album are very accessible, very easy to slip into, so to speak, for many people. I think they're also very nice to listen to. I've heard some really good crafted songs on this album. It's a very diverse collection of songs. The production makes these songs silky smooth and very polished. Again, many people would say that the producer overdid it a little bit, but that is always going to be a matter of opinion. Now, I think this album is definitely worth listening to. Some really great songs on this album, which, by the way, positively surprised me a bit. Talking about first impressions and expectations. So absolutely a great follow-up if you ask me. Again, some people may be thrown off because of the change in direction regarding the styles and genre. I think it's amazing, so thumbs up to James Bay. Okay, so my favorite songs of the album, I really like Pink Lemonade, I like Sugar Drunk High, I also like Wasted on Each Other, that's a really nice song. But I think at this moment my absolute favorite song of the album is Wanderlust. Okay, so that is all for now. Go check out this album for yourself and please let me know what you think about this album. Do you think this is a good follow-up album? Do you think it is overproduced maybe? What are your favorite songs on the album? Whatever it is, please let me know. Leave a comment. For now, I'm gonna say goodbye, so thank you for watching and I will talk to you soon.